The Galactic Empire had long known the power of its fleets, massive warships, elite soldiers genetically engineered to be the perfect soldiers, and technology beyond the comprehension of most races. Their domination of countless star systems had come without much resistance. Earth, a small planet on the edge of the galaxy, was a low-priority target, seen as primitive and unimportant. Yet, the Empire had decided it was time to eliminate the pesky human race. It would be quick. It would be easy. The first wave of the invasion came without warning. Ships as large as cities dropped from the dark skies. Orbital bombardments rained down, turning Earth's once peaceful cities into craters. The Empire's forces, led by Admiral Kalon, moved with ruthless efficiency. They had expected an easy victory. After all, what could a planet of humans possibly do against the Empire's might? But what the Empire didn't account for was the most dangerous weapon Earth had: human ingenuity. In a command center hidden deep underground, Captain Eric Novak stared at the incoming reports. The chaos was palpable. He had been prepared for a fight, but not this quickly. Earth had been invaded. No, more than that. Earth had been underestimated. The humans weren't entirely powerless. Their technology wasn't as advanced as the Empire's, but they had learned to adapt, to innovate. And Novak, a tactician known for his unconventional methods, had learned to think beyond the usual warfare strategies. As the reports continued to flood in, Novak stood up from his console, his mind racing. "We're not going to fight them like they expect," he muttered to himself, pacing back and forth. "We're going to make them laugh." It was a simple statement, but it carried weight. His team, comprised of the sharpest minds humanity had to offer, wasn't sure what to think. They had seen Novak take risks before, but this was different. This wasn't a calculated strategy, it was chaos, and chaos was Novak's domain. Sir, Selena Greaves, a scientist and strategist, spoke up cautiously. "Are you suggesting we fight with humor?" Novak turned to her, a glint of determination in his eyes. "Not just humor. Absurdity. They've never faced anything like it. They have their perfect fleets and their precision weapons. But we're not going to hit them with missiles. We're going to hit them with confusion." Selena stared at him for a moment, uncertain. Then she smiled slightly, understanding what he meant. She had seen Novak turn seemingly impossible odds into victories before, using nothing but his sharp mind and his belief that nothing was truly impossible. The first step was the most critical. The Empire's forces were relying heavily on their technological superiority. If the humans could make their advanced systems malfunction, they could slow down the invasion. The humans had no large fleets to send against the Empire, but what they did have were skilled hackers, people who could infiltrate, confuse, and disrupt. "We'll start small," Novak said, his voice low. "Let's make their communications scramble. Take down their sensors. If they can't trust their technology, they'll be lost. The battle will be ours." The team went to work. Hacking into the Empire's systems wasn't easy, but with a little creativity, they managed to trigger a series of unexpected events. Communications between ships became jumbled, sensors malfunctioned, and the Empire's warships began to act erratically. But Novak's plan wasn't just about disrupting systems, it was about creating chaos in their minds. The next phase of the plan was pure Novak. As the Empire's fleet attempted to launch more orbital bombardments, Earth's defense systems unleashed a barrage of EMP waves, simultaneously disrupting the Empire's technology while launching one of the most bizarre counterattacks imaginable: holographic warfare. The cities of Earth, which had been decimated, now shimmered with massive holograms, projecting fake explosions, fires, and entire armies of soldiers that didn't exist. The Empire's soldiers, who had been trained for warfare in the harshest conditions, now found themselves questioning everything they saw. Was that explosion real? Were those soldiers real? It was a mind game of the highest order. In the midst of chaos, humans were creating an illusion that was both terrifying and disorienting. "Are we winning?" General Colin Kane asked, his voice a mixture of disbelief and awe. Novak grinned. "We're not just fighting, Kane. We're confusing them." The Empire's forces struggled to understand what was happening. a human fighter jet, one of the few Earth-based warplanes that had survived the initial bombardments, charged straight toward the flagship of Admiral Kalon's fleet. But this wasn't a fighter jet carrying missiles or bombs. It was carrying something far more powerful, fireworks and EMP grenades. The jet flew in low, straight toward the enemy flagship, and then, just as the Empire's soldiers prepared for an attack, the pilot released a barrage of fireworks, setting off an explosion of light in the dark sky. Then came the EMP grenades, sending waves of electrical interference through the flagship's systems, causing everything to flicker and fail. The message was clear: we fight with everything, and we'll use whatever works. The Empire's flagship, a vessel of unimaginable power, was now immobilized. The crew, already on edge, began to panic. "What is this?" one of the officers asked in disbelief. "We're being attacked by fireworks back on Earth." Novak's team celebrated their first victory, but they knew this was only the beginning. The Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity's resilience and ingenuity. The people of Earth weren't merely surviving, they were adapting and thriving, using every advantage at their disposal. And then came the most absurd weapon of all, the human battering ram. General Kane, unable to hold back his laughter at Novak's methods, organized a ragtag group of civilians, farmers, athletes, and engineers, who had come together to fight back. They didn't have sophisticated weaponry, but they had something far more terrifying: a giant catapult. Using the resources around them, they began launching cars at the Empire's advancing ground forces, creating an avalanche of destruction. The sight was nothing short of chaotic. It was utterly absurd. A group of farmers had turned into warriors, using giant rubber bands and old-fashioned technology to send vehicles crashing into the Empire's ranks. "Why fire bullets when you can fire a Buick?" they shouted as the Empire's soldiers scrambled to avoid the flying cars. The Empire's forces were now caught in a nightmare of confusion. Their once advanced technology was failing them. They had expected a swift and easy conquest of Earth, but they had never anticipated this: human ingenuity, creativity, and an ability to turn even the most ridiculous ideas into powerful weapons. But Admiral Kalon wasn't ready to give up. He knew the fight wasn't over yet. He was confident that Earth's defense would crumble under the weight of the Empire's might. And yet, deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to face something more dangerous than any warship or weapon. As the first few hours of the invasion turned into a chaotic war of attrition, Novak sat back, watching the reports come in. His plan was working, maybe better than he had anticipated. He had thrown everything into disarray: technology, strategy, and even the Empire's expectations. The message was simple: humans didn't fight by the book. They fought by the heart, the mind, and the unpredictability that no empire could ever understand. In that moment, Novak knew one thing for certain: Earth wasn't just going to survive. They were going to win, and they were going to make the Empire regret ever thinking they could conquer humanity. The battle was just beginning. The invasion was a catastrophe for Earth, or so the Galactic Empire thought. Their fleet was vast, a coalition of the most advanced warships the universe had ever seen. They were equipped with every weapon imaginable, from planet-destroying orbital cannons to genetically engineered soldiers bred for war. The Emperor himself had orchestrated this attack, confident that Earth would crumble beneath the might of the Empire's power. For Earth's defenders, it was a different story. They were outgunned, outmatched, and, for all intents and purposes, doomed. But there was something the Empire had failed to understand: human resilience wasn't about overwhelming force. It was about fighting with everything you had, even when the odds were impossible. Captain Eric Novak had always been a man of unconventional tactics, and this moment was no different. As the Empire's forces launched wave after wave of orbital bombardments, Novak's team worked tirelessly behind the scenes to throw them off balance. His plan wasn't to win through traditional warfare, but to play the Empire at its own game, by confusing, by disrupting, and, most importantly, by creating absolute chaos. The first phase of Novak's plan came down to one simple thing: the element of surprise. The Empire's fleet had already begun their attack, and Earth's cities were being reduced to rubble. But the most powerful weapon Earth had wasn't in their air force, or their weapons, or even their military technology. It was in their ingenuity. The humans had learned to be resourceful, to adapt, and to use anything they could find to make their enemies question everything they thought they knew. The strategy was simple yet brilliant. They began by hacking into the Empire's communication systems, sending out fake orders, misleading intelligence, and false data streams. It wasn't difficult. The Empire relied too heavily on their technology, their certainty that their systems were infallible. But Earth's hackers didn't need sophisticated weapons, they just needed to sow the seeds of confusion. For every message they sent out, they left trails of misinformation that began to unravel the Empire's plans. In one of the most unexpected moves, Earth's military had rigged up an old military base to transmit fake intelligence about an impending invasion on another planet. The Empire, hungry for a quick conquest, diverted a significant portion of their fleet to this fake location, only to discover it was a decoy. It wasn't enough to win the war, but it was enough to create doubt. The Empire's forces were now split, unable to focus on their primary objective, Earth. "This is too easy," Novak said, grinning as he watched the chaos unfold from his command center. "They'll never see it coming." But Novak's plan wasn't just about hacking or distractions. The second part was much more absurd, yet it proved to be just as effective. Earth's cities, after being devastated by the Empire's first wave, now became the perfect stage for psychological warfare. Novak had one rule when it came to combat: never play by the Empire's rules. The holograms were set up in every major city, making them look as if the Empire was fighting against not just soldiers, but entire armies of citizens. The holograms projected images of tanks rolling down streets, soldiers in combat, and even fake explosions that lit up the night sky. It wasn't real, but it looked terrifyingly real. The idea was to overwhelm the Empire's senses, to make them doubt their own perceptions of reality. The first response from the Empire came with their ground troops. They descended on Earth's cities with the arrogance of an empire that had never been challenged. They landed in what they thought was a war zone, only to be greeted with nothing but fake battles. Soldiers fired into empty streets, targeting nothing but false targets. "What are they doing?" one of the commanders asked, bewildered as the soldiers fired at nothing. "They're going mad," another replied. "This can't be real. We're fighting ghosts." And that was exactly the point. Earth's response to the invasion wasn't just to fight back, it was to drive the invaders insane with confusion. But Novak didn't stop there. He had one more weapon up his sleeve, something the Empire could never have anticipated. A few hours after the Empire's forces had landed, a fighter jet appeared in the skies. It wasn't equipped with the most advanced missiles or high-tech weaponry, it was a simple human-made jet with a ridiculous payload. Novak, never one to play it safe, had instructed the pilot to fly straight into the heart of the Empire's flagship. The pilot, a man named Dean, had one job: to release fireworks and EMP grenades on the flagship. It was absurd, it was childish, and yet it was exactly what they needed. As the jet flew in low, Dean released the fireworks first, filling the sky with bright, colorful explosions. The Empire's fleet had expected a barrage of missiles. Instead, they were met with a spectacle, something completely unexpected. The fireworks were dazzling, bright and impossible to ignore. "What in the name of the Emperor is that?" an officer yelled, staring in confusion. Then came the EMP grenades, which exploded in the flagship's command center, knocking out all their systems and scrambling the crew's communication. It was a moment of total chaos. The Empire's most advanced warship, the one that had been leading the invasion, was now blind and vulnerable. The crew inside, trained to be ruthless and efficient, were suddenly powerless. The message was clear: you are not invincible. "This is impossible," the commander on the flagship muttered, watching as the fireworks exploded above his ship. "We're being attacked by fireworks?" The Empire, stunned and unsure of how to react, was now more vulnerable than ever. The jet, despite being nothing more than a human pilot with a simple payload, had done something far more effective than any weapon. It had humiliated the Empire. Back on Earth, Novak's plan continued to unfold. With the Empire's forces confused, divided, and demoralized, Earth's resistance grew bolder. The battle for Earth wasn't just a matter of military might, it had become a battle of wills. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, they were fighting to prove that even when the odds were insurmountable, they could stand tall. The next move came in the form of a human battering ram, a giant, absurd weapon that was nothing more than a makeshift catapult. General Colin Kane had organized a group of civilians, farmers, and engineers to create the most ridiculous weapon imaginable, a giant slingshot capable of launching cars at the Empire's advancing troops. As the first car sailed through the air and crashed into the Empire's line, the soldiers scrambled to avoid it. It was absurd, laughable even, but it was incredibly effective. The Empire's soldiers weren't trained to fight against such madness. They had no idea how to respond to a car being hurled at them from a giant slingshot. Their confusion only grew as more and more cars were launched, each one adding to the chaos. "We're not just fighting anymore," Novak said, watching the attack unfold. "We're fighting dirty." As the Empire's forces continued to struggle, Novak saw the opening he had been waiting for. The chaos they had created had worn down the Empire's morale. They were no longer fighting to win, they were fighting just to maintain control. "Now's our chance," Novak said, his eyes narrowing. "It's time to end this." And so, the final phase of the plan began. Earth's forces, emboldened by their strange but effective tactics, launched one final strike, one that would force the Empire to retreat, broken and defeated. What they lacked in technology and strength, they made up for in something far more dangerous, the human spirit. And as the Empire's last fleet ships disappeared into space, the message was clear. Humanity had won, not through power, not through weapons, but through sheer unpredictability and the will to never back down. The Empire had underestimated them. And now, they were paying the price. The Galactic Empire was not accustomed to failure. Every battle had been decisive, every conquest swift. The planets they encountered surrendered in fear, some falling without a fight, others crushed under the weight of the Empire's technological superiority. But Earth was different. Captain Eric Novak knew that better than anyone. As the invasion of Earth progressed, it became clear to the Empire that they were facing an entirely new kind of war. Instead of facing traditional military resistance, they were fighting against something unpredictable, a human spirit that refused to buckle under pressure. The first phase of Novak's strategy had been successful, confusion reigned, their technology had been sabotaged, and their command structure was in disarray. But Novak had known the battle wasn't over. The Empire would regroup, and when they did, they would come back harder. That's when he had to play his final card. Earth's cities had been devastated. Holograms, fake explosions, and EMP pulses had temporarily thrown the Empire off course, but now their response was growing more brutal. The Empire's forces were regrouping, determined to take the planet by force. Yet, as Admiral Kalon surveyed the chaos, a growing sense of unease began to gnaw at him. Earth's defense was unconventional, and the more he saw, the less he understood. The chaos wasn't random, it was deliberate. "We've been here too long," Kalon muttered, scanning the war maps. "This isn't just about conquering Earth anymore. It's a fight for control of the narrative." He was right. The war had transformed from a simple invasion into a battle of wills. Earth wasn't just fighting to survive, it was fighting to be heard, to be seen, to prove it could fight back. The irony wasn't lost on Kalon. The mighty Galactic Empire, with its advanced warships and genetically engineered soldiers, was now at the mercy of human unpredictability. In a bunker deep beneath the surface, Novak gathered his team. He stood at the head of a long, dimly lit table, surrounded by his most trusted allies, Dr. Selena Greaves, General Colin Kane, and a team of hackers and strategists who had worked tirelessly to disrupt the Empire's plans. Despite their initial successes, the Empire's response had escalated, and now Novak knew it was time to end this once and for all. The first two phases were just warm-ups. Novak began, his voice steady and commanding. "We've confused them, and we've embarrassed them. Now we make them pay for underestimating us." Selena raised an eyebrow. "How do we take it to the next level, Captain?" "We go full throttle," Novak said, the corners of his mouth curling into a grim smile. We show them exactly who they're dealing with." The team fell silent as Novak laid out his plan. It wasn't conventional. It wasn't even logical by normal standards. But if there was one thing Earth had learned, it was that the Empire could never anticipate their next move. The final phase of Novak's plan was a bold one that would push the Empire to the brink of madness. Earth wasn't going to fight by any set of established rules. Novak's idea was simple yet devastating. He would launch an attack not with military force, but with one of the most powerful tools at humanity's disposal: psychological warfare. "We're going to send them a message," Novak said, his voice hardening. "A message they can't ignore. And it's going to be so absurd, so ridiculous, that they won't know whether to laugh or cry. But they'll get it." The team exchanged confused glances, but they trusted Novak. He had gotten them this far. They were going to ride with him until the end. The plan kicked off with a small group of civilian volunteers. They were farmers, teachers, athletes, people from all walks of life who had decided to take a stand against the Empire. They had no formal military training, no advanced weapons. But they had something the Empire didn't: creativity. The volunteers had been instructed to build something massive, something ridiculous, something that would catch the Empire off guard. The result was nothing short of bizarre: a human battering ram. A giant slingshot, crafted from scrap materials, capable of launching cars at the Empire's troops. "Why fire bullets when you can fire a Buick?" one of the volunteers had said when asked about the weapon. As the first car soared through the air and crashed into the Empire's lines, the confusion was immediate. The soldiers, trained for combat, had no idea how to react. A car, was suddenly hurtling toward them, and they were forced to scramble out of its path. It wasn't a weapon they could fight against. It was absurd, and the absurdity was what made it so dangerous. "It's like trying to fight humans in a carnival," one of the Empire's officers said, watching the chaos unfold. "Now they're not just fighting us," Novak said, watching from a distance with a wry smile. "They're fighting everything." But the battering ram was only the beginning. Novak had a backup plan, a final move that would shock the Empire into submission. Earth's scientists had created a new weapon, one unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. They called it the comedic bomb. At first, it seemed impossible. How could humor ever be a weapon? But Novak knew exactly what he was doing. The idea was simple: the comedic bomb would release a frequency that disrupted the emotions of the Empire's soldiers, making them experience uncontrollable laughter. It wasn't about physical destruction. It was about breaking them mentally. And when it was detonated, the results were immediate. The soldiers, trained to be emotionless, to fight without hesitation, were overwhelmed with fits of laughter. It started with a few, then spread like wildfire. The Empire's troops, who had been bred to be the ultimate warriors, were now helpless, their concentration shattered by the absurdity of their situation. "What is this?" one of the Empire's commanders gasped, clutching his sides as laughter overtook him. They're laughing," another officer muttered, his voice shaking. "This can't be real." It wasn't just laughter. It was complete mental disarray. The Empire's troops could no longer focus. Their weapons were useless, their coordination shattered. They were defeated, not by force, but by humor, something they had never considered could be a weapon. Admiral Kalon watched in disbelief as his forces faltered. He had seen many things in his time, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The humans, once thought of as primitive, had turned the very idea of war on its head. "No," Kalon whispered, his voice low. "This cannot be happening." But it was happening. The Empire's carefully planned invasion had become a farce. Earth's people, with their absurdity, their unpredictability, had shattered the Empire's military machine. It wasn't just the weapons that had failed. It was the Empire's arrogance, their belief that nothing could stand in their way, that had been their downfall. "This is impossible," Kalon muttered, trying to regain control of his ship. But there was no control. There was no order. On the ground, the humans didn't stop. With the Empire's forces in disarray, Novak's final move was underway. Using the comedic bomb's effects to their advantage, Earth's forces launched a massive counterattack. But it wasn't the firepower that mattered. It was the sense of freedom, of chaos, that now drove Earth's resistance forward. The Empire's most advanced warships, once thought invincible, were now nothing more than floating targets. Earth's resistance, guided by Novak's unpredictable genius, moved in for the kill. There was no military strategy this time. There was only one goal: to show the Empire that no matter how powerful they were, they could never predict what would come next. As the Empire's fleet began to retreat, broken and humiliated, Novak stood victorious. He had done what no one had thought possible. He had turned the war into a game the Empire couldn't win. "They thought they could conquer us," Novak said quietly, staring at the retreating ships. "But what they didn't know is that we're unpredictable. And that's a weapon they can't fight." And so, Earth had won, not through strength, not through firepower, but through the one thing the Empire could never account for: the sheer unpredictability of humanity. The Galactic Empire, after countless victories across the universe, had made Earth its next target. Their mission was simple: annihilate humanity and claim the planet for themselves. But as the first wave of the invasion began, it became clear to Admiral Kalon that Earth was not like any other planet they had conquered. Humanity had something the Empire hadn't anticipated: an unpredictability that defied reason, a resistance that grew stronger with each challenge. The battle had been a spectacle of absurdity and genius, and Earth's response had left the Empire reeling. From holograms and EMP waves to car-throwing catapults and laughter-inducing bombs, every strategy was a slap in the face to the Empire's superiority. But Kalon was not one to give up easily. He had seen empires fall before, and he believed that Earth's antics were nothing more than the final desperate gasp of a species on the brink of destruction. He wasn't wrong, at least, not completely. Earth had made a statement, but Novak, its most unpredictable leader, wasn't finished yet. The Empire was bleeding, yes, but it wasn't out of the fight. The real battle was still to come, and Novak knew he needed one final push to finish it. "It's not enough yet," Novak said, his eyes scanning the readouts on the screen. "The Empire's fleet is still operational. They're retreating, but they're not giving up. We need to hit them where it hurts." Selena Greaves, who had been instrumental in disrupting the Empire's systems, looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. "You've already done enough damage. They can't operate under these conditions. What more can we do?" Novak smiled, though it wasn't a reassuring smile. It was the kind of grin that came before the most daring moves. "We've been playing defense long enough. Now it's time for them to play our game." It was a simple plan and concept, though it required the kind of creativity that could only come from a mind like Novak's. He had already proven that Earth didn't need advanced weapons to win the battle. What Earth needed was a final, decisive move that would make the Empire realize they couldn't just take over the universe by force, they had to understand it first. "We'll do it with one last trick," Novak said, his voice firm. "This time, we don't fight with armies. We fight with confusion, and we make them beg for mercy." The plan was audacious, even by his standards. It wasn't just about combat anymore, it was about bending the Empire to humanity's will. And the way Novak saw it, the perfect way to do that was by exploiting their most significant flaw: their arrogance. Back in the heart of the Empire's flagship, Kalon received the latest updates. The humans had inflicted more damage than anticipated, and their ability to adapt was maddening. Every time they thought they had Earth cornered, the humans did something completely unexpected. But Kalon wasn't willing to surrender to these primitive tactics. The Empire had never lost a war, and it wasn't about to start now. "We'll crush them," Kalon muttered to himself, though doubt lingered at the edges of his thoughts. But as he scanned the fleet's status, he was interrupted by a strange transmission. "Admiral Kalon, sir," a subordinate called out, "we've received a message from Earth." Kalon's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a military report, nor was it a direct threat. Instead, it was a video feed, a message from the humans. On the screen, the face of Captain Eric Novak appeared. His expression was calm, almost amused. He stood in front of a massive screen displaying nothing but random images, some of which seemed completely unrelated. The message played, and Novak's voice filled the room. Asterisk, you thought we would surrender? You thought we would bow down to you? The last time you came for us, you learned just how unpredictable we can be. But now, you're about to learn something far worse. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. This is a game. And you're the ones who've been losing it. Asterisk. A deep silence fell over the command room. The message wasn't just a taunt, it was a challenge, and it carried an unsettling undertone of certainty. Kalon stood, shaking his head. This is foolishness. Games? This is war. We are the most powerful empire in the galaxy. They cannot defeat us with mere tricks. Sir, we've begun to receive strange signals, his officer said hesitantly. Unusual data streams. It's like they're scrambling our systems again. Kalon clenched his fists. He couldn't let Earth continue to embarrass the Empire like this. Bring the fleet back into formation. We'll wipe them out once and for all. This ridiculous game will be over. But as Kalon barked orders, something far stranger began to happen. The flagship's navigation systems began to malfunction. The screens flickered, then went dark. Kalon cursed under his breath. What's going on? Another officer rushed to his side, her voice shaking. The systems, they're showing false readings. They're pointing us in the wrong direction. The ship's course is altering. A warning flashed across the screen, asterisk, collision imminent. Asterisk. What? Kalon snapped, looking up to see a massive asteroid field rapidly approaching. It was a maneuver the Empire had never seen before. An asteroid belt, filled with large space debris, was hurtling toward them at top speed, and they couldn't stop it. How did they? Before Kalon could finish his sentence, the flagship lurched violently. The entire fleet, caught in a web of miscalculated trajectories, had no time to react. The asteroid field wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It had been created a giant artificial decoy designed to confuse and disrupt the Empire's fleet. Human engineers had built the entire thing using the debris from destroyed satellites, transforming it into a massive, shifting field that disguised the true path of the flagship. And now, as Earth's final trap sprang into action, the Empire's flagship and its supporting ships were careening toward an impending collision. Kalon's mind raced. They tricked us. Again. But how? Novak's voice echoed in Kalon's mind. Asterisk, the game's not over, Kalon. And you're losing. Asterisk. The entire battle had reached its peak. The Empire's fleet was incapacitated, stranded in a field of space debris. Earth's forces, working with a mix of human creativity and sheer audacity, had managed to corner the Empire with one final, brilliant move. I don't understand, General Kane said as he watched the ships struggle to correct their course. How did they pull this off? Novak smiled. Like I said, Kane, it's all about unpredictability. The Empire thinks they can control everything, every variable, every move. But humanity, we don't play by their rules. We never did. Selena stood beside him, shaking her head in disbelief. You did it. You really did it. We did it, Novak corrected her. Earth did it. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting because we can. We will fight for our future. And we're not going to let anyone, no empire, no force, take that away from us. As the Empire's fleet struggled, Kalon realized that the battle had been lost. There would be no conquering Earth today, or ever. Humanity had turned the tide in a way no one had ever expected, and the galaxy would soon learn that Earth was not a planet to be dismissed, to be ignored, or to be conquered. The Empire had been defeated, not by force, not by technology, but by the sheer unpredictability and will of humanity. They had proven that. Even in the face of the most powerful enemy, the human spirit could not be broken. The last laugh, as Novak had predicted, was on them. And the message was clear: when humanity fought, they fought not just to survive, but to prove that their strength lay in their unpredictability, their creativity, and their refusal to be conquered.